Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Emily. I am a first year 4th grade teacher, and today's video is going to be a Q&A. I have not done a Q&A since I started teaching, so I figured it would be fun to do one on YouTube for you guys. It's Friday, we're just gonna be chilling, talking all things life, teaching, wedding, all that jazz. I asked you guys over on Instagram to ask me questions, so if you do not follow me on Instagram, you should, because I post on there pretty much every day. So if you want to take part in the next YouTube Q&A, definitely go follow me on Instagram. It's just at elementary with Emily, or at elementary.with Emily. So let me just pull these up here. So before we get started, I know I'm probably going to get some questions. My sweatshirt is by Teach, Create, Motivate, and she has her own little shop, and it's only open like a few times per year. So this one, it just says Teach. There's like a little ruler, pencil, and flare pen. Super cute, and it's really comfy, so I highly recommend that. Anyway, let me just get situated here. I have quite a bit of questions. I'm gonna try and get through as many as I can, so we shall see how many I actually get through. So let's get started. Question number 1, would you ever do anything besides teaching? Good question. I don't know. I'm not closed off to the idea of doing something else. Right now I do love teaching, so I don't think I would do anything else for like a long while if I did end up doing something else. I don't know what else I would do. If I did anything else, I'd probably do something in like the health fitness world, I think. So I don't think so, but you never know. Next question. Do your kids know you have a channel? No. They do not know, and I wish to keep it that way, just because I don't really think it's necessary for them to know, and I think it'd be kind of weird. I don't know. I'm just waiting for the day when they find my TikTok. Like, I'm sure that's probably gonna happen at some point. So I just like watch what I post and make sure it's like all appropriate, and I never post anything that's like, I never post anything that I would be embarrassed if my kids or my parents found. So yeah. Do you ever want kids of your own? I do, yes. Far down the road, I think. Like, I am getting married this year in October, and we definitely want to wait a while before we have kids. I'm still really young. I'm only 22. So I still have a while before I want to dive into that whole thing. Do you have a seating chart in your class? Yes, each of our groups, because as you know, I am departmentalized. If you do not know that, I only teach writing and science social studies. So I have 3 classes, and yes, we do have a seating chart. Because of COVID, really, we have a seating chart, as we are still having to like contact trace if somebody does test positive. So having that seating chart makes it a lot easier to like contact trace and know who, you know, all that good stuff. So yes, we do have a seating chart. Have you had your first teacher meltdown? Absolutely. I've had at least 3 already. It's been 4 weeks of school. We start pretty early, I think, compared to like some of the other teachers that I've seen. We started August 6th, or August 9th. I can't remember. The first week of August we started. So we've been in school for a little bit now. So yes, I have had my first teacher meltdown. How do you plan your lessons? Good question. So our county, like my district county, has like a resource website. They basically have a bunch of resources on there, and they have like a pacing guide that goes with the standards. So I reference that pretty much all the time, just to make sure I'm like pacing correctly. So like right now, our first unit according to the pacing guide is personal narrative. And the standard for my state, for Georgia, is just narrative. It's not necessarily personal narrative, fictional, whatever. So our county has set up like a couple weeks on personal narrative and a couple weeks on fictional narrative. So I go off of that. So like for personal narrative, I knew that I was going to be doing that for a few weeks. So I looked at the county's like lesson ideas and like how they thought we should like go about it, and it did not really make sense to me. I said this in a video before, I think. It did not really make sense to me, and so I knew like, okay, if it doesn't make sense to me, it's not going to make sense to my students. So I planned my own, and so I just kind of like searched up personal narrative units on Teachers Pay Teachers, and I shared that unit in my last video, I believe, or a few videos ago. I cannot remember, but it's over there in the description box of that video. And so it kind of gives you like an outline, and it made a lot more sense, and so I used that to plan my lessons. And then our county requires us to plan with lesson components, and they are connect, teach, lesson, or connect, teach, active engagement, work session, and share. And so that's kind of how I plan every day. I plan like, how am I going to connect this to the students? How am I going to actually teach the new content? How am I going to actively engage them in the lesson? And then what their like independent work time is going to be, and then what we're going to do to share at the end, whether that's like an exit ticket or they're sharing their writing, which we do most days. So that's kind of how I plan each day, is in that kind of like format. And I just plan on like a Google, what is it? A Google slide, or a Google, I think it's just like a Google Doc that we have. Like me and my team teachers, we have one Google Doc, so it's like reading, writing, math, science, social studies, and we put it all on the same thing. And so I just kind of like plan it on there, and it's nothing like super in-depth. It's just enough like so the SPED and ESOL teachers who push in know what we're doing, and so that they can be aware of what we're doing in class. So that's kind of how I plan. I don't know if that like answers your question. I can go more in depth in another video if you guys still have questions about planning, so just let me know. What type of breaks do you get during the year? 1 week at Thanksgiving, etc. So we get obviously Labor Day off. They just gave us like a mental health day, which I think is really awesome. September 20th, it's a Monday. So we're gonna get that day off. And then as far as just like weeks off, we get Thanksgiving break for a whole week, and then 2 weeks at Christmas or like winter break. And then we get 1 week for spring break, and that's it. We don't get like a fall break. Like I know some districts in my area get like a fall break and a February break. We don't do those, but we like end earlier on in the year. So it all works out. Is it difficult going through your first year of teaching, planning for a wedding, and moving? Yes, it is very difficult. I am constantly thinking of something and stressing about something, like constantly. Whether that's wedding stuff, house stuff, teaching stuff, it's just like constantly like something's happening, gears are turning in my brain constantly. And it is very difficult, but it's also really exciting having so much happening. And it's exciting having something happening like outside of teaching as well, because teaching is really hard. Your first year is so hard, and so having something to kind of like look forward to and like take your mind off of teaching is nice, but it's also very stressful. But I don't think I would change it. I think like it's just been really fun. More fun than it has been stressful, I think. I'd like to think. But yeah, it definitely is difficult, but it's not impossible. Do you think your first year is going differently than you thought it would? That's a good question. Do I think it's going differently than I thought it would? I don't think so. Like I kind of expected to just be frazzled and never know what I'm doing, and that's kind of how it's going. It's going really well though. I don't know, is it different than I expected? It is different than I expected in the sense that I expected that I was not going to like being departmentalized. Excuse me. I've shared this before, but I did not know that we were going to be departmentalized when I got hired. I thought that we were not going to be, and that's what like originally drew me to the 4th grade position, because a lot of times nowadays 4th grade is always departmentalized. So when they told me that it was not going to be departmentalized, I was like, ooh, perfect. And then they were like, actually, it's gonna be departmentalized. And I was super, super upset, because I love all subjects. I love teaching all subjects. And I love the idea of having like just my own like one class. And so I kind of expected to struggle a lot more with being departmentalized, but I actually love it. And I don't think I would do non-departmentalized. I would, but like I think I would prefer departmentalized. I just like it a lot. It's easy, not easy, it's simpler, more simple to plan, and I get to impact more kids. I get to have relationships with more kids, and so yeah, I like it a lot more than I thought. So I think that might be the only thing that's like going differently maybe than I thought. Any behavioral problems this year? Yes, definitely. It's hard as a first year teacher to know, like, is this normal? Like, is this just their age? Is it something I'm doing? Like, it's hard to like kind of differentiate that in your mind. But I did do like 6 weeks of interning in a special ed behavioral self-contained classroom, and so I do have a lot of experience with kids with behaviors, and so I think that's helped me a lot this year in terms of like dealing with kids with behavior. I have one in particular who is just like always angry about something, never wants to do his work. He's very defiant, and I think like you just have to love them and like really show interest in their life, and we have a great relationship now, and it's just like been such a big difference in these past 4 weeks of school of just like getting to know him and like building that trust, and now he trusts me, and so that really does like help the situation like with behavior. So yeah, but definitely do have some behaviors. Student teaching tips and classroom management / behavior. I got a lot of questions about classroom management, so I'll do that one in a second. Student teaching tips, I also got a lot of questions about. So student teaching is a very, very stressful time. A lot of people ask like, how do you not get overwhelmed? Like, how do you not get so stressed out with student teaching? Like, the answer is you don't. Like, you're gonna get stressed out, you're gonna get overwhelmed, which sounds a little bit harsh maybe, but it's the truth. And I think going in with that mindset of like, this is going to be overwhelming, but it's going to be okay. Like, you are going to be stressed, you're going to be overwhelmed, but you're going to get through it, you're going to be okay. And just like, on the other side of student teaching, I look back and I'm like, wow, I learned so much. It's hard to see that in the moment because you're so stressed and like trying to deal with all this stuff, and it's hard to see in the moment that like you're growing as a teacher and as a person and like you're learning. But looking back, like, I learned so much student teaching, it was like insane. And so I guess like my biggest advice would be to really like practice building relationships with students in student teaching as much as you can. Figure out like what you like to do to build relationships with students. Like, do you like to I don't know, talk about what they're into? Do you like to maybe like walk with them at recess? Like, figure out what your kind of strategy for building relationships is. I would say that's a big piece of advice. Another piece of advice, I think the most important thing is like, just ask any question you could ever think of to your mentor teachers, because whether they're amazing or whether like you're already like, oh gosh, I don't know if I am gonna learn anything here, ask as many questions as you can, because you will learn a lot from your mentor teachers, and they are there to offer you information, and they have years under their belt that they can give advice to you. I learned so much from my mentor teachers, and I would not be the teacher I am today at all without them, and I'm really grateful for that. So ask them all the questions, like lean on them. Like, if you're stressed out, talk to your mentor teachers, because they can help you. Don't just like try and figure it out yourself and like, oh, I have to do this myself. No, there's people there to help you. Ask your mentor teachers and they will be willing to help you, hopefully. If they're mentor teachers, they should be, you know, I don't know. It's a lot. It's definitely difficult, but you will get through it, and it's gonna be worth it in the end, because you're gonna grow so much. So good luck to all of you guys who are student teaching. You got this. It's gonna be okay. And then for classroom management, so a lot of people are like, what are you doing for classroom management tips, all of that good stuff. So my school is a PBIS school, which is Positive Behavioral Intervention System, I believe. If I'm wrong, I'll put it on the screen. But it's basically like each student has their own badge on a lanyard that has a QR code, and it has their name on it and all that good stuff. And I have an app on my phone. It's the PBIS app. I think it's similar to Class Dojo. Like I've never used Class Dojo, so I'm not exactly sure. You can tell me in the comments if this is similar. But basically, if I see them doing anything positive, being kind, doing their work, like doing something they weren't even asked to do, like all that good stuff, I can pull out my phone with my app and I can scan their badge and give them points. And then they can build up their points, and every Friday I have a store set up in the app, and so they can purchase things with their points every Friday. And then every, I want to say once per 9 weeks, the school has a big PBIS store, and so they can use their points to buy things from that as well. So that's kind of our like school-wide classroom management system, and I would say overall it's pretty good. You also can't take points away, which is the whole like positive, you know, whatever, can't take points away, which I think is good. I'm still trying to like navigate that fully, like what to do with students, because there's some students who just like really don't care about like the points, because I'll say something like, all right, like, let's work really hard so that we can earn some points, and they're like, I don't care about points, like, so what? So I'm trying to like figure out how to handle that. Like, I'm still learning classroom management, like it's only been 4 weeks, but that's like our school-wide classroom management, and that's working pretty well, I guess. And like, I feel like the biggest classroom management is just like building relationships with your students and making your classroom feel like a family. And so doing a lot of like, here and there I'll do like team building exercises or like community activities, things like that, like a lot of like turn and talks with your table, like just building that community in your classroom, and also your individual relationships with students. I feel like that's like the biggest classroom management tip I could give, because when you do that, it creates this thing of like, oh, we're family, like I want to work hard for my family, like I trust my teacher trusts me, I need to work hard for her, like all this kind of stuff. I feel like that's the biggest thing. I have not done anything on my own for classroom management aside from our school-wide PBIS. Last year for student teaching, I did Miss Wickman versus students, which I really liked, but because I have 3 classes, and then I also have a homeroom class that is different, so technically I have like 4 groups. It's very confusing, but anyway, so keeping track of that, Miss Wickman versus students, I feel like I haven't figured out how I would do that yet. So if I were to do any other classroom management, it would be that. But yeah, for now, PBIS is working well, and like we've only done the store twice. So they're kind of just now understanding like, oh, like the more points I earn, like I can get more stuff. Like, so it's kind of like just starting to turn. They didn't do this last year, the students didn't. So they're still kind of like getting used to it. So yeah, that's what I do for classroom management. I feel like it's going well. The building relationships thing is the biggest thing, and I feel like that's the biggest change I've seen in like my classroom management. So that would be my tip. I think the biggest thing for me like not to do is I never ever take away recess. Like no matter what, I would rather make them do a silent lunch and work rather than take away their recess. I just don't believe in that. I know that might make me mushy gushy or, you know, rainbows and unicorns, but it's what I believe, and I believe that kids need to get their energy out, and they deserve that time, they deserve that break to run around and be kids. So that's one thing I will just never do. So still trying to figure out like the consequence thing and like all that stuff. So once I figure that out, I'll let you guys know. If you have any tips for like consequences for students who don't do their work during class that isn't taking away recess, let me know. What's your favorite book of the Bible? That's a good question. I think my favorite book of the Bible is probably Ephesians. I just really like it. I always find comfort in a lot of those verses, so I need to go back and read that soon. But yeah, that's probably my favorite book if I had to choose one. How do you stay organized as a new teacher? I don't. I have ADHD and I'm unmedicated, so that's probably my biggest struggle as a teacher, as a first year teacher, is organization. I like to think that I like, in my brain I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so organized, I'm gonna do this and this, and I do it and I'm still not organized, and like it's just a lot. It's really stressful, and like all the things you have to like, hang on, my feet are falling asleep. It's a lot to keep track of, like all the forms and the assessments and the blah blah blah. So I'm not very organized, but we're working on it. And I'll figure it out one day and I'll let you know. Are you pursuing a master's degree? What's your plan for that? Right now I am not. I am 100,000% going to, in the future. I would like to move into my house, get married, and finish my first year of teaching first. I think I have enough on my plate for now. I don't know, but yeah, I want to finish my first year. I want to be married and all that stuff before I get my master's. And I still am deciding what I would get my master's in. I have like a few different things that I would like to get my master's in. I've thought about counseling, applied behavioral analysis, because I just love behavior. Like, I often consider being a SPED teacher, so I thought about getting my master's in behavior analysis, or just like elementary education, something in that like realm, like instruction or curriculum or whatever. So I kind of just have to like decide for myself like what I want to get my degree in, but that is definitely happening down the road. What is one of the best things your mentor teachers taught you in college? Good question. I had one mentor teacher who just like means the world to me. I talk to her weekly. She really like changed my whole perspective on teaching, and she made me the teacher I am today. Like, no doubt. Like, she always tells me like, you had it in you, like I didn't do anything, but she did. Like, she taught me so much. She was the one who was the emotional behavior disorder teacher, and the biggest thing that she taught me was to just be a human with your students. A lot of teachers just try to be so like uptight and like strict and they don't let their students like let them into their life or let them into like how they're feeling. Like, I am so like goofy and just like real with my students. Like, I tell them like, guys, I'm so tired today. Like, I'm so sorry if I yell. Like, I'm just really frustrated, blah, blah, blah. Or I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I told them like when I had to miss school, I'm like, I'm closing on a house, like we're moving, like letting them into your life and like letting them know things about you and like being goofy with them. Like, today we like just did goofy things, but we also got work done. So you can have a balance between like, it doesn't always have to be like, oh, I'm teaching right now, we're doing the standards, you have to be quiet and do independent work, and then we have to do this. Like, you can be goofy and you can like get a little bit behind, and the world isn't gonna end. But that's gonna build relationships with your students, and that's gonna go further than like doing academic work. Placing the relationships above academics, which I think is a little controversial, but that's what I think. So that's probably the best piece of advice that I've ever gotten. Where did you meet your fiance? Lots of mix of questions in here. We met in college. I was a sophomore in college when I met him. Yep, I was a sophomore in college when I met him. His friends, his roommates, I worked with his roommates, and we had like a lake day like with the people that we worked with, and he came because he was roommates with them, and that's how I met him. And then like we started a kind of like community group, like Bible study kind of thing, and we were both in it, in that like small group of people. And so that's how I met him, like got to know him and stuff. And so yeah, sweet and wholesome. What's one piece of advice you have for someone who wants to go into teaching? I would say teaching is a lot harder than people, like society makes it out to be. So I would say like have an open mind and be ready to work like your butt off in college, because everybody's like, oh my gosh, education degree, that's like that. It's hard. It is hard. Education programs are hard, at least mine was. And so it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of like, I guess, open-mindedness. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just like have an open mind, be ready to work hard, and be ready to be overwhelmed. But it's probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So yeah, Okay, last question. Tips for when you feel overwhelmed during the school day. So I'm really lucky in the fact that like my breaks are pretty spaced out. Like I teach for an hour in the morning and then they go to specials, and then I have planned for 45 minutes, and then I teach for another like hour and a half, and then we have recess and lunch, and then I teach for another like hour and a half, and then they switch, and then another 45 minutes, and then we go home. So I have my breaks are pretty spaced out well, and so I'm never like going a super long stretch teaching, except for like the end of the day. The end of the day, like I get so overwhelmed and like want to cry every day at the end of the day. But I would say like take those times. Like some days during my planning, I don't plan. Like I just sit there and I like breathe, and I like try and like just calm down, calm my anxiety, like calm my frustrations, like take those breaks that you need to take. And don't, if like you're feeling overwhelmed and you have like a bunch of stuff to do, like take a second during like their lunch or during plan to just like be with yourself and like not worry about planning for 1 second, and just like take a breather. I would also say, like going back to what I said earlier, like if I'm ever feeling like extremely overwhelmed, I'm real with my students and I tell them, I'm like, guys, I'm feeling really frazzled and overwhelmed. Like, can you give me like 10 minutes to just sit here and just kind of like figure a couple things out and just breathe for a second? And 9 times out of 10 they're like, yes, Miss Wickman, like we'll be quiet, and they like will silent read for like 10 minutes while I just collect myself. And that builds the relationships, which like in turn helps you. It's all a cycle. It's all a cycle. But I think that's the most important thing, is like take breaks when you need to. Not like you can take breaks whenever you want, but like during your plan or during recess or lunch, like just take a second. And then like if it's really bad, like just tell your students, be real with them. If they're younger, I don't know if they'll understand. My 4th graders definitely understand, and they like are like, oh yeah, like we will let you breathe for a second, like we're sorry, like we will silent read or silent write. And they appreciate honesty. They definitely do. And so yeah, that's my biggest tips for feeling overwhelmed. All right guys, that completes this video. Thank you guys so much for asking me questions on Instagram. Don't forget, if you want to be a part of the next Q&A, go and follow me on Instagram so that you can stay up to date with everything. I do a lot of like Q&As on the weekends, just like on Instagram. So if you're ever wondering anything, you can hop on over there and I'll answer some questions for you. I'm always in my DMs. Always, always, always. So if you have a question or you whatever, like you can just send me a DM and I'll answer. We can chat. I have a lot of girls that message me and they just ask for advice, and so I have a lot of friends that I give advice to over there on Instagram. So yeah, definitely go follow me on there. And I just got a like to know it, so I'm gonna start uploading on there as well. Go follow me on TikTok. I'm starting to upload there multiple times a week now, so that's pretty fun. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope that this helped you get into the long weekend mood and you're just chilling, maybe with some snacks and grape juice. I'm gonna get myself some grape juice here in a bit to celebrate this long weekend. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I love you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.